All right, hey folks. So what we're going to be doing today is taking a look at movement types in music. So we're going to talk about what that means. We're going to talk about how it's all working and what it is we're getting into here. So let's move me out of the way here. Probably going to have a couple of times where I move myself around, but that's okay. So we're talking about motion in music. So the first thing we got to know is that music is not static, meaning it doesn't stand still. Music is always moving in one way or another. If you listen to any song, you always hear this. It goes in some direction, either up or down or what have you. So the term that we're talking about for motion is going to refer to how the notes and pitches move on the staff. And we're going to start by focusing on the way pitches move. So there are three main categories of motion that we're going to be discussing here. We're going to be discussing the step, the leap, and the repeat. So coming up here, we are going to kind of take a look at the musical examples, different ways that the three movement types are going to work. So looking right here, we're going to start with the step. So the first type of movement that we're going to look at is the step. And in music, a step is referring to notes that move one pitch forward or backward in the musical alphabet. So if you look at the musical example down here, we've got this clarinet part that I wrote out for us. We start off on C and move to D. That's one letter, right? C follows D. If we start off on G and move to A, the musical alphabet is a weird alphabet because when we get to the end of it, which is G, we go back to the very beginning. So since we ended on G right there, we have to go back to the beginning of the musical alphabet, which is A. Again, you can see that no matter what octave you're in, if you go from C to D or G to A, that is still just one step because it is one letter that follows the one before it. So you can think of it as being from line to space, kind of as you see right there, or space to line. Now, the big kicker with this, though, ladies and gentlemen, is that they must be right next door to one another. Now, if you had, like, for example, a line going to a space with several different notes between them, that is not a step. That is something different that we're going to discuss in just a moment. All right? So you have to make sure that for a step, the pitches are right next door to each other. So moving on right here, we have this musical example. It's taken from Beethoven's Piano Sonata Number 8, Opus 12, Sonata Pathétique, his Pathétique Sonata. So when we're looking here, we can clearly see that running eighth notes are moving by steps. So we've got all of these eighth notes right here. And if you're looking, they're going from line to space and space to line without skipping anything. So if you're following my mouse right here, so far we haven't skipped a single note. We haven't moved more than a line or a space at any given time. Now, we do have something called accidentals here. You can see them, the symbols that are attached to it. We'll discuss those later. We're not going to worry too much about those. However, even if you just look at the notes themselves, those pitches, we are not going more than one line or space at a single time. Now, at the very end, there is a bigger one right here, but that's okay because we're looking at the main part of this melody that we see right here, and they are all right next door to one another. So now we're going to move on to the next movement type that we have here. It's called the leap. So this is sometimes called a skip. We're not going to really refer to it as a skip, though. We're going to refer to it as a leap. I'm going to do my best to always make sure I do that for you. So in music, a leap is when pitches move more than one pitch forward or backward in the musical alphabet. So if we're looking right here, we have C going up to E. Now we're skipping the letter D. The same thing, A up to C, we're skipping the letter B. If we're leaping down, like you see right over here, E down to G, we're skipping a lot of different notes. So the big thing is that you really need to make sure, as it says right here, you skip at least one pitch. Now that does mean it can be more than one. So often we can think of this as going line to line, space to space, but it can also be space to line or line to space, as long as you skip at least one pitch. So if you're going to remember anything about leaps, please remember that it has to skip at least one pitch. All right? So we're going to move on to this musical example right here. This is one of my favorite pieces, actually. It's the Hummel Trumpet Concerto in E flat. I've played this one a number of times. I really, really enjoy this piece. And we can clearly see the eighth notes starting here at the rehearsal mark O are skipping a lot of different notes. They're leaping all over the staff. Now, as you look in here, there are some leaps that are larger than others. For example, as you're coming down like this, sometimes the leaps get small and they only skip one pitch. Other times they skip a lot of them. So there is the occasional step in here. I do want you guys to be aware of that. So for example, like getting in here, you've got F moving up to G, like G down to F and back again. So that's only a step. The same thing, like right over here, we've got that same interval again. However, most of what you're seeing is what we call leap-wise. You have a lot of different leaps. You have spaces between all those notes, especially in this triplet fanfare right here. All of this, there's not a single step in the entire thing with those triplets. Both times that starts up, they are always leaping through those different notes. So this is a great example of what leaping in real music looks like. So far we've seen the Beethoven Pathétique Sonata and the Hummel Trumpet Concerto. If you'd like to look those up, please feel free to do that. They're really great pieces of music. But we are going to keep moving here, folks. So the final movement type that we have is something called the repeat. So the repeat does exactly what the name says. It repeats a single pitch at least twice. Now think about this. If you have one occurrence of a pitch, if you only hear it once, is that a repeat? It's really not, because it's only existing one time. Now, if you have several examples, several instances of that pitch, that would be a repeat because you are doing it more than once. So you have to have it occur at least 2 times to make it a repeat. So if you are looking here, we've got, for example, that C, that middle C below the staff right there. It's followed by another C. Now in the next measure, we have 2 A's that are following each other, then E's, and then B's. So yes, they are changing in each measure. They're changing where the pitch is, but within each measure, you are having the same pitch happen at least twice. So that's our repeat. So this is probably, like it says here, the most famous, one of, if not the most famous example of a repeat in Gustav Holst's The Planets, movement number 1. It's called Mars, the Bringer of War. Now, this is a really cool piece. It's written in what we call 5/4. That means that there's 5 quarter notes per measure. It's really interesting. It's really intense. This part, we are reading bass clef for this, but this is where this particular example comes from, so we're going to just deal with this for right now. We'll talk about bass clef later on. Don't get too concerned with what's going on here. You'll notice that we are playing the same pitch over and over again. We've got that da 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 over and over on the exact same pitch, that first line. Now at rehearsal mark number 2, that Roman numeral right there, yes, we do leap up. So between those 2 notes right there, that G at the bottom of the staff, because remember this is bass clef, up to that C right here, we do have a leap. So that one particular spot is a leap. Everything else, though, is repeats because it stays exactly on the same pitch. So I would really recommend that you take a look at this one. It's a really neat piece to listen to, and you'll hear a lot of really cool stuff in there. All right, so the last thing that I wanted to do is just kind of talk for a moment about putting all of this together. So we're going to take a look at Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. And this is a video that's going to have the sheet music on here. And we're going to talk a little bit as this is going about the things that you're seeing here. Because when we have music, you don't usually just have only steps or only leaps or only repeats. Those songs, if we did that, would realistically get a little bit boring. because when we put it all together, it creates these intricate melodies. It creates these interesting things that really grab your ear and hold your attention. So if we're looking at this, the Moonlight Sonata, we'll play it here. Oops, we'll go back here. So we've got leaps right here. As we're looking through here, the triplets right here are leaping. In the bass line, though, the notes are taking steps. And now in the melody, you've got that repeated G right there. And now the melody is stepping back and forth. And now the melody leaps too. So we'll go ahead and stop right there. So as you're listening to Moonlight Sonata here, you can hear that there's a lot of leaping. There's notes are moving up and down, and there's space between them. That bass line is taking steps. It's moving down by step. It's moving up by step, whatever. And then we've got our melody line that comes in there with that repeated bum, 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 that G right there that's repeating several times in a row. It's still on the screen right here. So even in this one image, we can see a lot of different movement types happening all at the same time. So even just looking at this one image, we've got the repeat right here. We've got leaps happening right here. And then we have steps happening as you go in through those different pitches. So putting it all together is something that happens very common in music. It's a very elaborate sort of thing that goes on here. So let's review real quick here. I know that this is getting a little bit long here, folks. Thank you for sticking with me. I appreciate it. As I said in the beginning, music is always moving somehow or another, whether it's going to be taking steps, which is moving one line or space, one letter of the musical alphabet at a time, whether it's leaping, which is skipping one or more lines or spaces, and therefore skipping one or more letters of the musical alphabet, or by repeating, which is going to be playing the same pitch 2 or more times in a row. So that's our lesson today on step, leap, and repeat. So let's move on to the next part of our activity and keep going here.